Trump, wearing his trademark red tie, looked uneasy as he shifted in his seat and whispered to an aide. Obama, in contrast, sat upright with calm composure. He wasn't president anymore, but there was still an unmistakable sense of authority about him, something the audience at home could feel. The moderator, a well-known national anchor, opened the evening by outlining the focus: presidential power, unity, and accountability. She explained that the questions would come directly from the people, and both Trump and Obama would respond in turn. At first, the exchange was polite, though tension lingered. Trump leaned on slogans, promising strength and control, often drifting off script with remarks that sparked laughter and applause from his supporters. Obama, by contrast, spoke slowly and clearly, using examples from past administrations and simple language that connected with everyday concerns. From the very beginning, every word, pause, and gesture seemed to weigh heavily in the room. Viewers weren't just listening, they were comparing who seemed more in control. A woman from Tucson asked about health care. Trump offered bold promises, insisting his administration had the best plan, but never named one. Obama answered with numbers, showing how protections for pre-existing conditions had saved lives. Then he told a short story about a family in Ohio nearly bankrupted by medical bills, a story that drew the crowd in and held the cameras on his face. Next, a retired teacher from Mesa asked about civility in politics. Obama went first, saying disagreement was natural, but respect was essential. Trump shot back with lines about fake news and witch hunts, earning cheers from loyalists but sighs from others. By now, it felt less like a Q&A and more like a contest between two towering figures with millions deciding in real time who they trusted more. No one yet realized how quickly the night would change. One simple question from an ordinary man in the crowd would soon silence the room and spark one of the most unforgettable moments ever broadcast live. But before that turning point, Trump still had the floor. The spotlight narrowed on him as the moderator leaned forward. The air grew tense. This was his stage, cameras rolling, eyes fixed on him, and you could almost see him drawing energy from it as he adjusted his microphone. Trump leaned back with a familiar smirk, ready to remind everyone he was in charge. "Look, folks," he began, chopping the air with his hands. "Nobody knows more about the presidency than me. Nobody. And I can tell you this, we're doing better than ever. The economy is strong, the military is stronger, and America is respected again. That's what matters." The crowd responded with uneven applause, his supporters clapping loudly in the front rows, others offering polite taps from the back. He thrived on that sound, pausing mid-sentence to let the cheers swell before diving back in. But what stood out to viewers at home wasn't the clapping. It was how quickly his words jumped from trade to crime to the border, rarely connecting one point to the next. For his base, the energy was the message, not the details. The moderator pressed him, steering back to the theme of the night. "Mr. President, tonight's question is about executive power. Where does it end?" Trump leaned forward, lowering, his voice as if sharing a secret. "The truth is, the president has tremendous power, more than people realize. When you're in that office, you're the one protecting the nation, making the big calls. You can't let Congress slow you down, or courts second-guess every move. When you're president, you do what's right for the country. And yes, you do what you need to do." Gasps ran through parts of the crowd. Some clapped harder, thrilled by his words. Others shifted uneasily in their seats. The camera lingered on Obama. He didn't flinch or smirk, just watched quietly as though waiting for his turn. Trump pushed on, gesturing at the audience. "If I tell the FBI or the Justice Department to look into something, they should do it. If I want action, I should get action. Otherwise, what's the point of being president? A president has to protect the country without all the nonsense." Then his words started to tumble faster. He waved a hand, voice rising. "The president can do whatever he wants, okay? That's the truth. People don't like it, but it's true." The room froze for a beat, so silent you could hear someone clear their throat. The moderator's eyebrows shot up. The cameras caught the split in the crowd, supporters nodding firmly, others staring with unease. Trump noticed the tension and doubled down. What I'm saying is this: you need a strong president, not someone tied up in rules and so-called checks and balances. That's weakness, not leadership. I was elected to get things done, and that's exactly what I'm doing. In that moment, the contrast between the two men was stark. Trump was animated and forceful, selling his argument like a deal closer. Obama sat still, hands folded, eyes steady. The air felt heavy, as if something was about to snap. Then it happened. A voice rose from the audience. A man in his late 40s, wearing a plain blue button-down, had been handed the microphone. The man's voice was steady and firm. "Mr. President, are you saying the Constitution lets you do whatever you want?" The atmosphere shifted instantly. The camera cut to Trump's face as he opened his mouth, but the question had already changed the room. Before he could defend himself, the moderator turned to Obama, and the audience braced for impact. The man with the microphone didn't look like someone chasing headlines. He wasn't in a suit, carrying notes, or grandstanding. He looked like an ordinary citizen who had finally asked the question that had been weighing on him. He repeated it, clearer this time. "Do you believe the law gives you unlimited power? Because that's what it sounds like you're saying." A low murmur spread across the hall. Some leaned forward, waiting for the clash. Others folded their arms, bracing for a fight. The moderator gave Trump the first chance to respond. Trump tilted his head, irritation flickering across his face. "Look, the Constitution. It's a great document, fantastic. But it's old, okay? And sometimes it doesn't fit today's world. We have terrorists, criminals, disasters, things the founders could never imagine. So, yes, the president has to use power. That's leadership. You can't tie the president's hands and expect him to keep the country safe." His supporters clapped loudly, trying to drown out the unease building in the room. But the words hung heavy. Unlimited power. Many shifted in their seats, whispering to one another. Cameras caught it all, hands covering mouths, narrowed eyes, heads shaking. The moderator pressed again. "So, just to be clear, Mr. President, you're saying the president isn't bound by the limits of the other branches of government?" Trump leaned in. "I'm saying the president is the highest authority in the country. That's what people elected me for. If I want to make a call, I should be able to make it. That's how you get things done." The room fell silent. Even some of his supporters seemed unsure now. Then the camera cut to Obama. He hadn't moved. His calm expression was almost unnerving, like a teacher letting a student finish before stepping in. The moderator turned to him. "President Obama, you've heard what President Trump just said. What's your response?" Obama leaned toward the microphone, his voice measured and deliberate, with that familiar rhythm from his speeches. "Well," he began, "that's not how our system of government works, and it never has." The audience broke into applause, relieved by the clarity of his words. He waited for the noise to fade, then continued. "The Constitution was written with care. The founders, even in their time, understood something important. Power in the hands of one person is dangerous. That's why they created 3 branches of government, each with its own responsibilities, each keeping the others in check. That way, no single person, no matter how powerful or popular, can simply do whatever they want." The camera caught Trump shifting uncomfortably in his chair. Trump gripped the microphone tighter. "That's not true. That's not how it works today." Obama didn't raise his voice or even look at him. Instead, he turned slightly toward the audience, speaking to them rather than sparring with the man beside him. "Think about it this way. If a president could do whatever he wanted, order arrests, shut down investigations, ignore the courts, then we wouldn't be a democracy anymore. We'd be something else, and I don't think anyone here wants that." The hall exploded with applause. People rose to their feet, clapping above their heads as cameras swept across faces filled with excitement, gratitude, and relief. Obama let the sound roll before adding a single, pointed line. "Presidents aren't kings. They're servants of the people." The sentence cut clean through the noise. Simple, sharp, unforgettable. Reporters were already typing, sending it out to newsrooms. Producers whispered into earpieces, preparing instant headlines. Trump tried to break in, waving his hand. "That's not true, Barack. You're twisting it. The courts, the Congress, they've been unfair. Nobody's been treated more unfairly than me. Nobody." But his words were drowned by the roar of applause. The momentum had shifted, and everyone knew it. What made the moment historic wasn't just Obama's words, but the silence that followed. For a few suspended seconds, the room held its breath. Chairs creaked, cameras clicked, but no one spoke. It wasn't emptiness, it was weight. Everyone sensed they had just witnessed a turning point. Trump leaned back, jaw tight, gripping the microphone like a weapon. He wasn't used to being corrected on live television, especially not by the man whose legacy he had tried to tear down. His face darkened, lips pressed tight. Before he could respond, the moderator leaned forward. "Former President Obama, could you explain further what you meant by presidents not being kings?" Obama gave a small smile, calm but not smug. "Sure," he said, again addressing the audience. "When we teach civics in schools, we explain checks and balances. It's not just a phrase, it's a safeguard. Congress makes the laws, the courts interpret them, the executive enforces them. That's the system. If a president ignores those limits, he's breaking the very rules that make this country a democracy." Applause broke out before he even finished, rolling like a wave across the hall. On TV, the split screen said it all. Obama, steady and clear, with the audience behind him. Trump, stone-faced, struggling to hide his frustration. When the cheers finally faded, Trump cut in sharply. "That sounds nice, Barack. Really nice. But that's not the real world. The real world is messy. When you're president, you don't have time for lectures. You have to act fast. People want results, not classroom speeches." His tone drew cheers from loyalists, but the contrast was unmistakable. Obama's words sounded like a reminder of the civics lessons Americans had grown up with. Trump's reply sounded like those rules were disposable when inconvenient. A woman shouted from the crowd, "So, the rules don't apply to you?" Laughter and scattered applause followed. Trump's face tightened further. The moderator quickly stepped in. "Let's move forward. Mr. Obama, you mentioned the courts earlier. Could you give an example of how they've limited presidential power in recent years?" Obama didn't miss a beat. "Absolutely. Just last year, the Supreme Court made it clear that presidents cannot use executive authority to block investigations into their own conduct. That's a fundamental principle. No one is above the law, not even the president. And if a president could decide which laws applied to him, then the law itself would mean nothing." The audience erupted, many rising to their feet. The cameras caught more than applause. They captured faces lit with recognition, people nodding, as if Obama had voiced what they'd all been struggling to say. Trump tried to cut in. "That's not what the court said. You're twisting it." Obama stayed calm. "No, Donald, that's exactly what the court said. And every American can read the decision for themselves. Presidents don't get to rewrite the law. They're bound by it, just like everyone else." The crowd broke into laughter and applause, not mocking, but the kind that comes when the truth is laid bare. Even viewers at home could feel it. Social media was already buzzing with clips, spreading before the event was even over. Obama hadn't just corrected Trump, he'd left no room for argument. The silence that followed carried a new charge, as if something irreversible had just shifted. The moderator quickly moved on to the next audience question, but the change in the room was undeniable. Trump looked rattled. Obama looked steadier than ever. Then came the real blow. The moment. Obama distilled everything into one line that would echo for days. Given the floor again, he let the silence breathe, waiting until the audience leaned in. His voice was low but clear. You know, the thing about power is that it's always tempting to want more of it. That's human nature. But the greatness of America is that we built a system where no one person holds all the cards. That's not a flaw, it's the design. The applause that followed was steady, almost reverent, like the audience was agreeing with an old truth they'd nearly forgotten. Trump jabbed a finger toward him. That's your opinion. You had 8 years and didn't deliver half of what you promised. You're lecturing now, but when you were in the chair, you didn't have the guts to make the tough calls. The crowd split, some booing, some cheering. The tension crackled. Obama didn't flinch. He gave the faintest smile, then looked back to the audience. Donald, the tough calls aren't about getting your way every time. They're about knowing when the law says you can't. That's the job, not pushing past limits but respecting them. The hall roared with applause. Cameras swept across faces glowing with admiration. Phones held high to capture what was already becoming a viral moment. Obama leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. Imagine a president who doesn't like what a newspaper writes, so he orders it shut down. Or a president who ignores a judge's ruling because he doesn't agree with it. That's not strength, that's tyranny. And America has always been stronger than that. The line landed like a thunderclap. Gasps, cheers, wide eyes, even. The moderator couldn't hide her reaction. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. Trump's vision of unchecked authority against Obama's reminder of constitutional limits. Trump fired back. You're exaggerating. Nobody's shutting down newspapers. Nobody's ignoring judges. This is just scare tactics. Obama shook his head. No, Donald, these aren't scare tactics. They're history. Our founders put limits in place because they'd seen what happens when one person holds too much power. Kings abused it. Dictators abused it. The Constitution was built to stop it. The applause thundered louder than before. Then came the line that defined the night. Obama didn't raise his voice or lean in for effect. He simply said it, plain and clear. That's not how the law works, Donald. Presidents aren't kings. The hall erupted. People leapt to their feet, whistling, clapping, shouting. Some laughed and shook their heads as if they couldn't believe it had been put so bluntly. The noise rolled on for half a minute before the moderator could even try to regain control. On screen, the split image told the story. Obama, calm, collected, almost serene. Trump, frowning, restless, his lips moving as though searching for a comeback but finding nothing quick enough. Social media exploded. Clips spread instantly with captions like, Obama just schooled Trump, and presidents aren't kings. Best line of the night. Newsrooms were already drafting headlines. The phrase carried weight because it was simple, undeniable, and true. Trump leaned forward at last, voice raised. You think you're clever, Barack, but people don't want lectures about kings. They want a president who fights for them. That's what I do. I fight. Obama let him finish. Then, steady and quiet, he replied, You can fight for people, Donald, without breaking the rules that protect them. In fact, that's the only way the fight really matters. The audience rose again, cheering and clapping, the energy tipping fully to Obama. He hadn't just corrected Trump. He'd reminded people why his words still carried trust. But what cemented the moment wasn't Obama's calm dismantling. It was Trump's reaction. He couldn't take back control. Producers backstage knew it instantly. They whispered to each other. That's the clip. The words, "Presidents aren't kings," were already looping in the control room. Inside the hall, the energy was almost physical. People were on their feet, whistling, clapping until their hands were red. A few Trump supporters tried to rally cheers of their own, but their voices were drowned out by the roar that filled the room. Trump sat stiff in his chair, his face shifting between irritation and disbelief. Trump tapped his fingers on the table, leaning back, then forward again, clearly searching for a line, anything that could pull the moment back to his side. But nothing he said could erase what the audience had just seen. At home, millions reacted in real time. Twitter feeds lit up with fragments of Obama's line, already trending within minutes. Facebook watch parties and comment threads exploded. Viewers clipped the exchange on their phones, posting it with captions like "Game over" and "This is why Obama is still respected." Even TikTok, usually dominated by quick jokes and trends, filled with edits of the moment set to dramatic music, racking up hundreds of thousands of views in minutes. Back in the hall, the moderator tried to restore order. "Gentlemen, please, let's allow the next audience question." But the atmosphere had already shifted. Obama was no longer just a guest. He was the voice that had cut through the noise. Trump, by contrast, was on the defensive, stuck under a spotlight he couldn't control. A young college student stepped up to the microphone. Wearing a gray hoodie and glasses, she looked nervous, but her voice was steady. "Mr. President," she said directly to Trump, "if the law doesn't limit you, then what stops a president from abusing that power? From targeting people they don't like?" Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by scattered applause. Trump leaned into his mic, his tone tight. "That's not what I said. Don't twist my words. I'm saying the president has to act when others won't. Nobody's stronger on protecting people than me. Nobody." But before the applause could fade, Obama leaned in calmly. "The answer to your question," he told the student, "is the Constitution. That's the safeguard. A president can't target people just because he doesn't like them. If that ever happens, then the system has failed. But as long as we stand by those principles, the system protects us." The hall erupted again, applause rolling even longer this time. The student smiled nervously as she sat back down, relief written across her face, a reflection of what many watching at home felt. Trump, irritated, waved a hand. "Barack talks nice, he always has, but talking doesn't solve problems. People want action. People want a strong president who doesn't waste time." Obama didn't even look at him. His reply was gentle, almost measured. "Strong leaders follow the law. Because if the law doesn't matter, then no one is safe, not even the people cheering for you." The crowd roared, rising to their feet once more. On the split screen, Obama looked composed, even serene, while Trump sat red-faced, gripping the table as if he might shake it loose. In the control room, producers were already pushing the clip to national networks. Headlines flashed across the bottom of the broadcast. "Obama corrects Trump on presidential power." By the time the event ended, "Presidents Aren't Kings" was trending worldwide. Even outlets that usually leaned conservative couldn't ignore it. Commentators summed it up simply. Trump looked flat-footed, Obama commanding. The contrast had become undeniable. A calm, deliberate explanation against a defensive, blustering response. It was television gold. Inside the hall, the shift was permanent. The audience wasn't just listening anymore. They were waiting for Obama to bring clarity where Trump delivered confrontation. Each time Obama spoke, the room swelled with applause. Each time Trump snapped back, the clapping thinned. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone could feel it. But the night wasn't over. Trump wasn't built to take humiliation quietly, and his attempt to claw back control only deepened the divide. He gripped the microphone like a lifeline, leaning forward, voice rising until it cut through the noise. "Listen, folks, I've been treated more unfairly than any president in history. Nobody has been attacked the way I've been attacked. Fake news, phony investigations, witch hunts, you name it. And now we've got Barack sitting here pretending he's the expert, when he left behind a disaster, the worst mess. If it weren't for me, this country would be in total collapse." The reaction split. Loyalists in the front rows clapped fiercely while others groaned, tired of the refrain. A man in the middle muttered, loud enough for microphones to catch, "There he goes again." Obama didn't move. He sat with his hands clasped, eyes fixed on Trump, letting him go on. That patience, that restraint, only sharpened the contrast, with Trump's spiraling energy. Trump jabbed a finger across the stage. "Barack, you think you're so smart, talking about laws and courts and checks and whatever else. But let me tell you something. Laws don't stop crime. Strong leaders stop crime. And I'm the strongest leader this country's ever had." He thumped the table for emphasis. People want safety. They want strength. And you can't get that from lectures about some old piece of paper written 200 years ago. The words hit with a thud. Gasps rippled across the hall. For a president to call the Constitution some old piece of paper wasn't just reckless, it was shocking. Even his most loyal supporters looked uneasy. In the front row, a woman in a red campaign hat glanced at her husband, unsure whether to clap at all. The moderator turned quickly. "Mr. Obama, would you like to respond?" Obama leaned forward, speaking slowly, almost gently. "The Constitution isn't just an old piece of paper. It's the reason we can even sit on this stage tonight, argue in front of a free press, and answer questions from citizens. It isn't fragile, it's resilient. But it only works if the people in power respect." By midnight, the clip had already been viewed millions of times. Twitter's trending list was dominated by phrases like "Presidents aren't kings," "Obama versus Trump," and "Town Hall Showdown." Instagram Reels looped the moment with dramatic music and captions like "Game over." On TikTok, teens who hadn't watched the town hall were lip-syncing Obama's words to tracks of roaring applause. The frenzy wasn't just online. The next morning, newspapers across the country plastered the exchange on their front pages. The Los Angeles Times declared, "Obama schools Trump on the Constitution." The Boston Globe went with, "Presidents aren't kings. Obama rebukes Trump in viral town hall." Even the Wall Street Journal, usually measured, ran with, "Obama challenges Trump's view of presidential power." In Washington, constitutional law professors filled cable news panels. One from Georgetown explained, "What President Obama did tonight was remind Americans of the most basic civics lesson, that the presidency is limited by design." Another from Stanford was blunt. "President Trump revealed tonight that he either doesn't understand or doesn't care to understand the limits of his office." Across the country, people were talking about it as if they had been in the room. In a diner in Albuquerque, a man told his friend over coffee, "Did you see Obama shut him down? He made it sound so simple, like the law's supposed to be obvious. And Trump, he just looked lost." Late-night shows amplified the moment further. One comedian opened with, "Obama reminded Trump that presidents aren't kings, which is a shame, because Trump already ordered a golden crown off Amazon." The audience roared, and the clip played for the third time that night on national television. But the frenzy wasn't just about the humor, it was about the gravity. Commentators debated its impact. Some argued it might reshape how undecided voters think about presidential power. Others dismissed it as another viral spike in a crowded news cycle. Yet the clip's reach suggested otherwise. This one stuck. Even conservative columnists struggled to defend Trump. A writer in Dallas admitted, "Obama's rebuke was a reminder of the civics lessons many of us learned in high school." Trump's dismissal of the Constitution as some old piece of paper may not play well outside his base. For Obama, the night's work was done. He had delivered his message calmly, clearly, and with finality. For Trump, the fallout was only beginning. Behind the scenes, aides scrambled to soften the damage, drafting statements that tried to reframe his remarks as calls for swift action, not unlimited power. Reporters were quietly told the president had been misunderstood, but the damage was already written into headlines and etched across trending hashtags. Meanwhile, the moderator who had guided the night appeared in interviews, describing the silence. That fell after Obama's defining line. "You could feel it," she said. It wasn't just applause, it was recognition. People realized they had heard something that mattered. The frenzy outside the hall was only part of the story. The deeper impact was how Americans wrestled with what they had seen, and how that moment began shaping the way people judged both men long after the cameras stopped rolling. By the next morning, the clip was everywhere, not just on the news or social media, but on TVs in airport terminals, gym locker rooms, and radios in cars stuck in traffic. Obama's words had cut through in a way few political moments do anymore. Clear, undeniable, and easy to repeat. Presidents aren't kings. In Phoenix, where the event took place, diners and coffee shops buzzed with debate. At a breakfast spot in Tempe, two veterans in their 70s argued across the counter. One shook his head. Trump, embarrassed himself last night. "You can't just say you're above the law. That's not how this country works." The other shot back. "He's just being real. Politicians hide behind rules, and Trump tells it like it is. Messy, heated, but happening everywhere." In that sense, Obama had sparked something rare. A national conversation about the Constitution, not in classrooms but at kitchen tables. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers couldn't avoid the fallout. Reporters swarmed, pressing senators and representatives. Some Republicans downplayed the exchange, saying Trump had been taken out of context. Others dodged the question altogether. Democrats, meanwhile, seized on the moment. One senator from Oregon put it bluntly, "Obama said what many of us have been saying for years. No president is above the law. Period." Legal scholars filled op-eds coast to coast. Some dissected Trump's argument that a president should act without interference, warning it echoed patterns of authoritarianism. Others praised Obama for returning the debate to first principles. A Harvard professor wrote, "Sometimes the most powerful argument isn't technical, it's simple." By reminding Americans that presidents aren't kings, Obama cut through decades of legal jargon with a truth every citizen understands. Polls, just days later, showed the fallout. Independents' approval of Trump's handling of presidential authority dropped sharply. Focus groups described his comments as reckless and dangerous. By contrast, Obama's favorability, already high for a former president, spiked, especially among younger voters who had endlessly shared the clip. Some of the most telling reactions came from ordinary Americans. In Las Vegas, a high school civics teacher played the clip for her class. Afterward, students debated whether Trump meant what he said or was exaggerating. One girl raised her hand. "It doesn't matter what he meant. What matters is that Obama made it simple. We're not supposed to have kings here." The room fell quiet. The teacher later told a colleague it was the first time she'd seen her students lean in so deeply to the lesson. Meanwhile, Trump scrambled to fight back. He tweeted furiously, calling Obama arrogant and accusing the media of twisting his words. At a rally in Nevada, he claimed the town hall had been rigged, the moderator biased, the audience stacked with radical Democrats. His base roared. But outside the rallies, the narrative was slipping away. Cable networks replayed his words alongside Obama's. The contrast impossible to miss. One late-night host summed it up with a single joke. Obama gave a civics lesson and Trump gave us a tantrum. The audience laughed, but the message was serious. Trump had walked into a trap of his own making. Even within conservative circles, quiet concern grew. One strategist, speaking anonymously, admitted, "The president doesn't do well in unscripted formats when policy comes up. Last night proved it. Obama didn't just out-talk him, he made him look uninformed." Back in Phoenix, the man who had asked the question that sparked it all stepped into the spotlight. His name was Daniel Rhodes, a middle-aged accountant. Speaking to local reporters, he said he never expected his words to ignite such a moment. "I just wanted clarity," he explained. "When I heard the president say he could do whatever he wanted, it scared me. I wanted someone to set the record straight, and Obama did. That clip aired across evening news segments, humanizing the exchange further. It wasn't just two politicians trading blows. It was a citizen asking for an answer and getting one. The lesson was simple. Leadership isn't about dominating the stage, shouting louder, or brushing off rules. It's about clarity, respect, and the ability to reassure people that the system protecting them still matters. As the frenzy cooled and headlines faded, what lingered wasn't only the clash itself, but the moral at its heart. By week's end, the initial shock and laughter had given way to reflection. Americans weren't replaying Obama's words because they made for good television. They replayed them because they carried a deeper message about leadership and responsibility. In a cafe in Albuquerque, a young father explained it to his son over breakfast. The reason we don't have kings is because kings can hurt people, and nobody can stop them. Here, we have rules. Even the president has to follow them. The boy nodded, not grasping the full weight, but the point was clear. This wasn't just about Trump versus Obama. It was about America itself. Obama's calm rebuke became a teaching tool. Teachers played the clip in classrooms. Pastors cited it in sermons about humility and accountability. Community leaders used it to spark conversations about civic duty. The line, "Presidents aren't kings," grew beyond a soundbite. It became a reminder of the fragile balance that holds the country together. For Trump, the weeks that followed were unkind. Every attempt to spin his words backfired. At rallies, he claimed his remarks were taken out of context, but the cheers were never as strong as before. He tried to cast Obama as a relic of the past, but too many people had seen the split screen. One man calm, deliberate, grounded in law, the other defensive, dismissive of the very rules he had sworn to uphold. The contrast lingered. Editorials echoed a common theme: the difference between knowledge and bluster, between clarity and chaos. One columnist wrote, "Obama didn't humiliate Trump with insults. He humiliated him with facts, and that's why the moment stuck." And yet, beneath the viral headlines and political commentary, something deeper had taken root. For many Americans, the town hall wasn't about picking sides. It was about realizing how easily the line between democracy and something darker could blur. The reminder that even the highest office in the land is bound by law felt strangely comforting, almost necessary. In Phoenix, where it all unfolded, a mural appeared downtown just weeks later. Across the wall, in bold letters, were the words, "Presidents aren't kings," painted over the image of the Constitution. Tourists stopped to take photos. Locals said it symbolized the moment, the night their city hosted a conversation that stretched far beyond its borders. For Daniel Rhodes, the accountant who asked the question, life shifted briefly. He was invited onto talk shows, asked what it felt like to spark such a historic exchange. He always answered humbly, "I didn't plan it. I just asked what was on my mind." The real answer came from Obama. That humility reinforced the moral of the night. Sometimes history isn't made by the powerful, but by ordinary people asking simple questions. And that moral mattered. Leadership isn't about claiming the right to do anything. It's about knowing when you can't and why. Power without limits isn't strength, it's danger. Real strength is restraint, the discipline to respect rules that protect everyone, not just the person at the top. So, what's the takeaway from that town hall? It's simple. Knowledge wins over noise. Calm wins over chaos. Respect for the law outlasts any attempt to bulldoze through it. And no matter how loud the voices of power get, the Constitution speaks louder, if we're willing to listen. That's why the story of that night still matters. It's not just about a viral clip or a soundbite that circled the globe. It's about remembering the foundation this country is built on, and the responsibility of every citizen to defend it. because presidents aren't kings, and the people must never forget it. If you believe in that message, if you believe facts should matter more than bluster, and accountability should always outweigh arrogance, then don't stop here. Keep the conversation alive. Share this story with your family, your friends, your community. And if you want more stories that remind us why leadership and truth matter, make sure to subscribe, because the lessons don't end here, and neither should we.